Captain Jake Morrison walked across the bridge of his ship, the Aurora's Edge, looking at the screens that showed empty space around them. His crew had been out here for 3 months now, doing the boring job of mapping asteroid fields near the edge of human space. It was not exciting work, but someone had to do it. The ship was not big, carrying only 43 people, but it was fast and had good sensors for this kind of work. Jake was a man in his early 40s with short brown hair and tired eyes. He had been in space for 15 years, starting as a junior officer and working his way up to captain. Most of his missions were like this one, routine patrols and mapping runs that kept the space lanes safe for merchant ships. He did not mind the quiet work, but sometimes he wondered if he would ever do something that really mattered. Lisa Park sat at the communications station, her fingers moving over the controls as she monitored radio signals from across this part of space. She was young, maybe 25, with black hair tied back in a simple ponytail. Lisa had joined the crew 6 months ago, fresh from the academy, and she was still eager to prove herself. Most days, her job was listening to boring reports from cargo ships and mining stations. Today started like any other day. Ben Carter, the navigator, was updating star charts while Amy Rodriguez watched the sensor displays for anything interesting. Danny Walsh was down in engineering, making sure the engines ran smoothly, while Ryan Bell kept watch from the tactical station. Dr. Emma Foster was in the medical bay, probably reading research papers to pass the time. Jake was reading reports on his personal screen when Lisa suddenly sat up straight at her station. Her eyes went wide as she pressed buttons and adjusted her equipment. The sound she was hearing was not something she had heard before. "Captain?" Lisa called out, her voice carrying across the quiet bridge. "I am getting a signal. It is not from any human ship." Jake looked up from his reports and walked over to her station. "What kind of signal?" Lisa pressed more buttons, and strange sounds came from the speakers. It was not like human radio traffic at all. The sounds were musical, rising and falling, in patterns that seemed almost like singing. But underneath the music, there was something else, something that made Jake feel worried. "It is a distress beacon," Lisa said after running the signal through the computer. "The automatic translator says it is from a Zephyrian merchant vessel. They are calling for help." Jake felt his heart beat faster. The Zephyrians were one of the alien races that humans had met when they joined the Galactic Commerce Union, 5E. Years ago, they were peaceful traders who flew ships that looked more like living things than machines. Their ships were grown rather than built, with smooth curves and surfaces that could heal themselves when damaged. Ben Carter heard the conversation and looked up from his navigation station. He was a thin man with glasses who had been mapping space for 10 years. "Captain, let me check those coordinates." He worked at his station for a few minutes, then looked up with a worried expression. "Sir, that signal is coming from deep inside the Crimson Nebula. No one goes there. The radiation storms would tear apart most ships." Jake knew about the Crimson Nebula. Every spacer did. It was a huge cloud of red gas and energy storms that had been declared off-limits by the Galactic Commerce Union. Ships that went into it were never seen again. The radiation levels inside were so high that they could kill a crew in minutes. The energy storms moved in random patterns, making it impossible to predict safe paths through the nebula. "Amy, what can you tell me about that signal?" Jake asked. "The sensor operator." Amy Rodriguez was a small woman with short hair who rarely spoke unless she had something important to say. She studied her screens carefully before answering. "I am picking up multiple life signs, Captain, but they are getting weaker. Whatever hit their ship, they do not have much time left." Jake stood quietly for a moment, thinking. The Zephyrians had always been polite to humans, but they were not exactly friends. Most of the alien races in the galaxy saw humans as newcomers who did not really belong yet. Humans had only been in space for about 50 years, while some alien races had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. The safe thing to do would be to report the distress call to the Galactic Commerce Union and let them handle it. But Jake knew that by the time a rescue ship could be organized and sent to the nebula, the Zephyrians would be dead. Even then, no one had ever successfully rescued anyone from the Crimson Nebula. Most people thought it was impossible. "Lisa, can you get any more information from their signal?" Jake asked. Lisa worked at her station, adjusting frequencies and trying to clean up the signal. "It is very weak, Captain, but I think I can make out some words. They are saying something about refugees and safe passage. And they keep mentioning children." The word children hit Jake like a punch in the stomach. He had no children of his own, but the thought of kids trapped in that death trap made his decision for him. He looked around the bridge at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting to see what he would do. "Ben, plot a course for the nebula," Jake ordered. "Maximum speed." The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew what this meant. They were going to try something that had never been done before. They were going to fly their ship into a place where ships went to die, all to save aliens they had never met. Ben Carter stared at his captain for a moment, then nodded and began working on the navigation computer. Amy Rodriguez checked her sensors. Again. Lisa Park opened communication channels to prepare for what they might find. Ryan Bell started running checks on the ship's weapons and shields, though he knew that weapons would be useless against radiation storms. Down in engineering, Danny Walsh felt the ship's engines change their rhythm as they began to accelerate toward the nebula. He did not know why they were speeding up, but he trusted his captain. Dr. Emma Foster looked up from her research as she felt the ship change course. She had a feeling that her medical skills were about to be needed. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the red glow of the Crimson Nebula grow larger on the main screen. He had made his choice. His crew had followed his orders without question, even though they all knew the risks. In a few hours, they would either save lives or die trying. None of them knew that this decision would change how the entire galaxy saw humanity forever. The Aurora's edge moved through space at full speed toward the red glow that grew bigger on their screens with each passing hour. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge watching the nebula get closer, feeling both excited and scared at the same time. He had never seen anything like it before. The Crimson Nebula looked like a huge storm made of red clouds and lightning that stretched across space for millions of miles. Lisa Park worked at her communications station, trying to get more information from the Zephyrian distress signal. The signal was getting stronger as they got closer, but it was also getting more broken up. Sometimes she could hear voices speaking in the musical language of the Zephyrians, but most of the time there was only static and interference. "Captain," Lisa called out, "I am getting pieces of their transmission. They keep saying something about engine failure and hull breach, and they mention that they have passengers, not just crew." Ben Carter looked up from his navigation station with a worried face. "Sir, we are about to enter the outer edge of the nebula. Once we go in, our communication with the outside galaxy will be cut off. No one will know where we are or what happened to us." Jake nodded. He knew this was the point of no return. Once they entered the Crimson Nebula, they would be on their own. No help could reach them, and no one would even know if they died trying to save the Zephyrians. The first wisps of red gas began to swirl around their ship as they crossed into the nebula. Amy Rodriguez watched her sensor screens and reported what she was seeing. "Radiation levels are starting to climb, Captain. Still within safe limits, but climbing fast." Dr. Emma Foster came onto the bridge carrying a medical scanner and several radiation detectors. She was a woman in her 30s with blonde hair and green eyes who had been the ship's doctor for 2 years. Emma had seen her share of emergencies, but nothing like this. "I am monitoring everyone's radiation exposure," Emma said, as she attached small detectors to each crew member's uniform. "These will tell us when we are getting too much radiation. If the levels get too high, we will have to turn back or risk serious health problems." Danny Walsh's voice came over the communication system from the engine room. "Captain, I am seeing some strange readings down here. The nebula seems to be affecting our engines in ways I have never seen before. It is like the energy from the storm is trying to get inside our ship. Jake felt the ship shake slightly as they moved deeper into the red clouds. Through the main screen, he could see lightning bolts of energy dancing through the gas around them. Some of the bolts were bigger than their entire ship. The radiation alarms began to beep softly as the levels continued to rise. "Shields are holding," Ryan Bell reported from the tactical station. "But I am seeing power fluctuations. The energy storms out there are unlike anything in our databases." Ben Carter worked hard to keep the ship on course as the nebula began to push and pull at them with invisible forces. The normal rules of space travel did not seem to work here. His instruments kept giving him readings that made no sense. "This place is strange," Ben muttered, as he adjusted their flight path to avoid a particularly large energy storm. "The radiation is not random like we thought. It seems to move in patterns." Lisa Park had been listening to this conversation while trying to maintain contact with the Zephyrian ship. Suddenly, she looked up with excitement in her eyes. "Captain, Ben is right. I have been studying the interference patterns in the radio signals. The radiation storms are not random at all. They follow specific patterns, like they are part of some kind of system." Amy Rodriguez checked her sensors and found something that made her lean forward in surprise. "Captain, I am detecting structures in the nebula, not natural formations. These look like they were built by someone." Jake walked over to look at Amy's sensor display. What he saw there made him catch his breath. Deep in the swirling red clouds, there were shapes that were definitely not natural. They looked like huge towers or monuments, all connected by streams of energy. Could this be some kind of ancient defense system? Emma Foster asked as she studied the readings. Maybe that is why ships that enter the nebula never come out. Maybe something is protecting this place. Danny Walsh came up from engineering, wiping grease off his hands with a dirty cloth. He was a big man with thick arms from years of working on ship engines. "Captain, I think I know why our engines are acting strange. The energy in this nebula is not just radiation. It is some kind of controlled force, like a giant machine that covers this whole area of space." The ship shook harder as they moved, deeper into the nebula. The red glow outside was getting brighter, and the energy storms were getting bigger and more frequent. Jake could feel the fear growing among his crew, but he also saw determination in their faces. They had come this far, and they were not going to give up now. "Lisa, are you still getting the distress signal?" Jake asked. Lisa nodded and put the signal on the bridge speakers. The musical voices of the Zephyrians could be heard through the static, but now there was something else, fear and desperation that needed no translation. "I think I understand now," Lisa said quietly. "This nebula is not just a natural phenomenon. It is some kind of ancient security system. But there are gaps in it, safe paths that change over time. If we can figure out the pattern, we might be able to navigate through it." Ben Carter worked with the ship's computer, trying to map the safe corridors that Lisa had discovered. It was like trying to solve a puzzle that kept changing every few minutes. "I see it now," he said after several minutes of intense work. "The safe paths shift in cycles. If we can time our movements right, we can follow them deeper into the nebula." Amy Rodriguez suddenly pointed at her sensor screen. "There, I found them. Zephyrian ship, designation Peaceful Current. They are about 50 miles ahead, but they are in bad shape. Life signs are very weak. Through the swirling red clouds, they could see the alien ship on their main screen. The Peaceful Current was beautiful even in its damaged state. Like all Zephyrian ships, it looked more like a living creature than a machine. Its hull was smooth and curved, colored in shades of blue and green that seemed to shimmer even in the dim light of the nebula. But the ship was clearly dying. Parts of its hull were dark where the energy storms had burned through. Pieces of debris floated around it, and there was no sign of engine activity. "They are trapped in a pocket of calm space," Ben reported. "But the energy storms around them are getting stronger. We have maybe an hour before that pocket collapses and crushes their ship. Jake looked at the tactical display and felt his heart sink. The Zephyrian ship was surrounded by some of the biggest energy storms they had seen. Getting to them would mean flying through waves of radiation that could kill them all. "Danny, what is our shield status?" Jake asked. Danny shook his head grimly. "Shields are down to 60% and falling. One more major hit from those energy storms, and we will be in the same situation as the Zephyrians." Dr. Emma Foster checked her radiation detectors and saw numbers that made her worry. "Everyone is approaching dangerous exposure levels, Captain. We need to make a decision soon." Jake Morrison looked at his crew and saw fear in their eyes, but also trust. They were counting on him to find a way to save both the aliens and themselves. He looked back at the main screen where the dying Zephyrian ship waited in its shrinking bubble of safety. The question was no longer whether they could reach the aliens. The question was whether any of them would survive the attempt. Jake Morrison stared at the main screen where the dying Zephyrian ship floated in its shrinking bubble of safety. The energy storms around it were getting bigger and more violent with each passing minute. His crew looked at him with worried faces, waiting for orders that might save them all or kill them all. Danny Walsh came back onto the bridge with sweat on his face and dirt on his uniform. "Captain, our shields are failing faster than I thought. We are down to 40% now. The radiation out there is like nothing I have ever seen. It eats through our protective systems like they are made of paper." Dr. Emma Foster checked her radiation monitors and shook her head. "Everyone on this ship is already getting too much radiation. If we stay in this nebula much longer, we will all get sick. Some of us might die even if we escape." Ryan Bell studied his tactical displays and gave them more bad news. "The energy storms between us and the Zephyrian ship are massive. Our computer says we have less than a 5% chance of getting through them with standard flight methods." Ben Carter worked at his navigation station, trying to find a safe path to the alien ship. But every route he calculated ended the same way. "Captain, there is no safe way to reach them. The storms are too big and too random. We would be destroyed before we got halfway there." Lisa Park listened to the Zephyrian distress signals, which were getting weaker and more desperate. Through her headphones, she could hear voices that sounded scared and hopeless. "Captain, they know they are dying. They are saying goodbye to each other." Jake felt the weight of command pressing down on him like a heavy stone. 43 human lives depended on his decisions, and somewhere in that dying alien ship were more lives that needed saving. The safe choice would be to turn around and leave. No one would blame him for refusing to attempt the impossible. But as he listened to the alien voices through Lisa's speakers, something inside him refused to give up. These were thinking beings with families and dreams, just like humans. They did not deserve to die alone in this nightmare place. "What if we are thinking about this all wrong?" Dr. Emma Foster said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Emma was usually quiet during tactical discussions, but now she had an idea that might change everything. "What do you mean?" Jake asked. Emma pointed at the main screen where the energy storms danced through the red clouds. "We have been trying to fight the storms, to power through them with our shields and engines. But what if we do not fight them at all? What if we work with them instead?" Kevin Hayes, one of the navigation specialists, looked up from his station with sudden understanding. "You mean surf the radiation waves instead of trying to punch through them?" Danny Walsh stared at Emma like she had lost her mind. "That is crazy. The power changes alone could destroy every system on this ship. We have never tried anything like that before." "But," Lisa Park said, studying her communications equipment, "we could change our engine frequency to match the storm patterns. Instead of fighting the energy, we could become part of it temporarily." Amy Rodriguez ran some quick calculations on her sensor computer. "It might work. If we can match our ship's energy signature to the nebula's patterns, the storms might not see us as a foreign object to destroy. Ben Carter was already working on the idea, running simulations on his navigation computer. The theory is sound, but the timing would have to be perfect. One mistake and we get torn apart by forces we cannot control. Jake looked around the bridge, at his crew. They were all scared, but they were also excited by the possibility of doing something that had never been done before. How long would it take to set up? Danny Walsh was already thinking about the engineering challenges. I would need to rewire half the ship's systems, connect our engines to the shield generators in ways they were never designed for. It could take hours, and we do not have hours. The Zephyrian ship does not have hours either, Amy Rodriguez said, watching her sensors. Their life signs are getting weaker. Whatever is keeping their ship alive is failing. Lisa Park suddenly sat up straight at her communications station. Captain, I am getting something new from the Zephyrian ship. Not just distress calls. They are sending technical information about their ship's systems. She put the new signals through the universal translator, and text began appearing on her screen. They are telling us how their organic technology works, how their ships grow and heal themselves. Captain, I think they want us to understand their systems so we can help them better. Kevin Hayes studied the information and made an exciting discovery. Look at this. Their ship does not fight the radiation like ours does. It absorbs some of it and uses it for power. That is how they survived this long in the nebula. Danny Walsh read the technical data and felt his mind racing with new ideas. If we could combine our technology with theirs, create some kind of hybrid system, we might be able to do more than just survive the storm. We might be able to control our movement through it. Dr. Emma Foster looked at the medical data the Zephyrians had sent. They have people on that ship who are badly hurt. Different species, not just Zephyrians. It looks like they were carrying refugees when they got trapped here. This news hit Jake like a physical blow. The Zephyrian ship was not just a merchant vessel that had gotten lost. It was a rescue ship that had been trying to save others when it got caught in the nebula, just like his crew was trying to do now. How many people are we talking about? Jake asked. Amy Rodriguez studied her sensor readings carefully. I count 27 life signs still active, but some of them are very weak. Different species have different tolerances for radiation. The bridge went quiet, as everyone understood what this meant. They were not just trying to save a few alien traders. They were trying to save refugees from multiple species, including some that might be children. Danny, how fast can you make those modifications to our systems? Jake asked. Danny Walsh thought for a moment. If the whole crew helps, and if we use some of the Zephyrian technical data they sent us, maybe 2 hours. But Captain, this has never been tried before. We could destroy our own ship trying to save theirs. And if we do nothing, they all die. For sure, Jake replied. Lisa, send a message to the Zephyrian ship. Tell them we are coming and that we need their help to make this work. Lisa Park composed a message using the translation computer and broadcast it toward the alien ship. A few minutes later, she received a reply that made her smile for the first time in hours. Captain, they say they understand our plan. They are willing to help us modify our systems using their organic technology. They say no one has ever tried to rescue anyone from this nebula before. Ryan Bell ran some tactical simulations and found something encouraging. If this works, we might be able to do more than just rescue them. We might be able to learn enough about the nebula to make it safe for other ships in the future. Jake Morrison looked at his crew and saw determination replacing fear in their faces. They were about to attempt something impossible, but they were going to do it together. Human technology combined with alien knowledge, all focused on saving lives that no one else cared enough to risk their own lives for. All hands, this is the captain, Jake announced over the ship's communication system. We are about to try something that has never been done before. We are going to save those people, and we are all going home alive. The crew of the Aurora's Edge began working faster than they had ever worked in their lives. The Aurora's edge became a place of controlled chaos as the crew worked to modify their ship in ways that no human had ever attempted before. Danny Walsh led teams of engineers through the corridors, carrying tools and equipment to install the hybrid systems that might save them all or destroy them in the attempt. In the engine room, Danny worked side by side with information sent from the Zephyrian ship. The alien technical data showed him how organic technology could work with human machines. It was like learning a completely new language, but a language written in energy patterns and living circuits instead of words. "This is incredible," Danny muttered to himself as he connected human power systems to organic interface modules that the Zephyrians had somehow grown inside their dying ship. Their technology does not just use energy, it talks to it. Dr. Emma Foster moved through the ship with her medical team, preparing to treat injuries from multiple alien species that she had only read about in textbooks. The medical data from the Zephyrian ship showed her that the refugees included beings with completely different body chemistry than humans. "Kevin, I need you to help me set up isolation chambers," Emma called to Kevin Hayes, who was taking a break from navigation work. "Some of these species breathe different gases than we do. If we bring them aboard, we need to be ready." Lisa Park worked at her communication station, maintaining constant contact with the Zephyrian ship while coordinating the rescue preparations. The alien voices had become familiar to her over the past few hours, and she could hear the hope growing in their musical language as they realized that the humans were actually going to attempt the rescue. "Captain," Lisa reported, "the Zephyrians say they are ready to help us with the final modifications, but they warn us that once we start this process, we cannot stop it. Either we succeed completely or we all die together." Ben Carter and Amy Rodriguez worked together to map the energy patterns around the trapped alien ship. They had discovered that the storms followed cycles that repeated every 18 minutes, but the cycles were getting shorter as the nebula's defense systems tried to eliminate the foreign ship. "We have maybe 6 more cycles before their safe pocket collapses completely," Amy reported. "After that, nothing can save them." Jake Morrison moved through his ship, checking on the work being done in every section. He could see the fear and determination in his crew's faces as they prepared for something that seemed impossible. But he also saw something else. He saw people who had decided that saving lives was worth any risk. In the cargo bay, teams of crew members prepared the rescue, pods that would be used to evacuate the survivors from the Zephyrian ship. But these were not normal rescue operations. The pods had to be modified to carry beings from different species, each with different environmental needs. Ryan Bell worked on the ship's defensive systems, though he knew that weapons would be useless against the energy storms. Instead, he focused on power distribution, making sure that every system on the ship could get the energy it needed during the rescue attempt. "Captain," Danny Walsh called over the communication system, "we are ready to test the hybrid systems, but I have to warn you, once we activate them, our ship will never be quite the same again." Jake made his way back to the bridge where his senior officers were waiting. The main screen still showed the Zephyrian ship floating in its shrinking bubble of safety, but now the energy storms around it looked different. Instead of seeing them as obstacles, the crew had learned to see them as currents that could carry them to their destination. "All stations report ready," Lisa Park announced. "The Zephyrians are standing by to coordinate their systems with ours." Dr. Emma Foster came onto the bridge carrying her medical scanner and looking worried. "Captain, everyone's radiation exposure is already above safe levels. If this takes too long, we will have crew members getting sick even if we succeed." "How long do we have?" Jake asked. Emma checked her readings. "Maybe 4 hours before someone starts showing serious symptoms. 8 hours before we have permanent damage." Ben Carter looked up from his navigation station. "Captain, I have our course plotted. We will have to ride 3 separate energy waves to reach the Zephyrian ship. Each wave is bigger and more dangerous than the last." Amy Rodriguez studied her sensors and gave them their final tactical briefing. "The first wave will test our hybrid systems. The second wave will push us beyond anything our ship was designed to handle. The third wave will either carry us to safety or tear us apart. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. These people had followed him into this nightmare place, and now they were about to attempt something that violated every rule of space travel. But they were doing it to save lives, and that made all the risk worthwhile. "Danny, activate the hybrid systems," Jake ordered. Down in engineering, Danny Walsh pressed a series of buttons that connected human technology to alien organic systems, in ways that should have been impossible. The ship's engines changed their sound from the familiar hum of human machinery to something that seemed almost alive. "Systems are online," Danny reported. "Captain, our ship is now part human and part Zephyrian. I can feel the energy patterns of the nebula through our hull." Lisa Park established the final communication link with the alien ship. "Zephyrians are ready to coordinate with us. They say they will guide us through the energy currents using their ship's organic sensors." The Aurora's edge began to move toward the first energy wave, but it moved differently than it ever had before. Instead of fighting against the forces around it, the ship began to flow with them. The sensation was strange and frightening, like riding a wild animal instead of driving a machine. "First wave approaching," Ben Carter announced. "Everyone hold on." The energy wave hit them like a tsunami of power, but instead of crushing the ship, it lifted them up and carried them forward. The hybrid systems worked exactly as planned, allowing them to surf the radiation instead of being destroyed by it. "It is working," Amy Rodriguez called out in amazement. "We are actually riding the storm." But their celebration was short-lived. Through the main screen, they could see the second energy wave approaching, and it was twice as large as the first one. Worse, the Zephyrian ship's safe pocket was collapsing faster than they had calculated. "Captain," Lisa reported urgently, "the Zephyrians say some of their refugees are losing consciousness. The children are in the worst condition." Jake felt, his heart racing as he realized that they were running out of time. The second wave would either carry them close enough to begin the rescue, or it would destroy both ships and kill everyone aboard them. "All hands, prepare for the second wave," Jake announced. "This is going to be rough." The wave that approached them was a wall of energy that stretched as far as they could see. It moved through the nebula like a living thing, beautiful and terrible at the same time. In a few seconds, they would either master it or be consumed by it. The Aurora's edge rode toward the impossible, carrying the hopes and fears of two crews who had decided that some things were worth dying for. The second energy wave hit the Aurora's edge with a force that made the entire ship shake like a leaf in a hurricane. Jake Morrison gripped his captain's chair as the hybrid systems struggled to keep them riding the storm instead of being torn apart by it. Through the main screen, he could see energy crackling around them in colors that had no names. "Hull stress approaching critical levels," Danny Walsh reported from engineering, his voice tight with worry. "The organic systems are trying to adapt, but they are being pushed beyond their limits." Dr. Emma Foster watched her radiation monitors climb into the red danger zone. Several crew members had already collapsed at their stations, overcome by the massive energy exposure. "Captain, we are losing people. If we do not reach that ship soon, we will not have enough healthy crew left to complete the rescue." Ben Carter fought to keep the ship on course as the energy wave tossed them around like a toy. "Second wave peak approaching in 30 seconds. If we can ride it out, we should be close enough to reach the Zephyrian ship." Lisa Park maintained communication with the alien vessel despite the interference from the energy storm. "Captain, the Zephyrians say their ship is breaking apart. They have maybe 10 minutes before complete hull failure," Amy Rodriguez studied, her sensors through the static and energy interference. "I can barely see them, but they are there. Maybe 2 miles away now, but Captain, look at this." She pointed at her screen where new contacts were appearing. Jake looked at the sensor display and felt his blood go cold. "What are those?" "More ships," Amy replied grimly. "I count at least 6 different vessels, all dead in space. We are not the first ones to try rescuing someone from this nebula. The graveyard of ships around them told a story of failed rescue attempts spanning decades. Alien vessels from a dozen different species floated dark and lifeless in the energy storms, their crews long dead. The Aurora's Edge and the Peaceful Current were just the latest additions to this collection of noble failures. We are not going to end up like them, Jake said firmly. Ryan, prepare the rescue pods. Emma, get your medical teams ready. Lisa, tell the Zephyrians we are coming. The second energy wave reached its peak and began to subside, leaving the Aurora's Edge battered but intact. The hybrid systems had worked, but barely. Warning lights flashed throughout the ship as damaged systems struggled to keep working. Third wave is building, Ben Carter announced. This one is different. It is not moving in a straight line like the others. It is spiraling, like a tornado made of energy. Danny Walsh left the engine room and came onto the bridge, his face pale from radiation exposure. Captain, that last wave burned out half our hybrid systems. We can ride one more energy. Current, but it has to be the right one. We will not get a second chance. Through the swirling red clouds of the nebula, they could finally see the Zephyrian ship clearly. The Peaceful Current was a work of art, even in its dying state. Its organic hull gleamed with patterns of blue and green that seemed to shift and flow like living skin. But large sections of the ship were dark where the energy storms had burned through its protective layers. Life signs are dropping fast, Amy Rodriguez reported. I count 21 survivors now, down from 27. The children are in the worst condition. Dr. Emma Foster prepared her medical teams for the rescue operation. They had modified their equipment to work with alien biology, but much of it was guesswork based on the technical data the Zephyrians had sent them. We will have to treat species I have never seen before, using medicine that might kill them instead of saving them. You will figure it out, Jake told her with confidence he did not entirely feel. You always do. The third energy wave approached, them like a spiral of pure power, spinning through the nebula and growing larger with each rotation. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, a force of nature that could destroy planets or carry them to safety. This is it, Ben Carter announced. If we catch this wave at the right angle, it will take us directly to the Zephyrian ship. If we miss, it will throw us into the graveyard with all those other dead ships. Kevin Hayes worked at his navigation station, calculating the precise moment when they needed to enter the spiral. We have one shot at this. Too early and we get thrown off course. Too late and the wave passes us by. Lisa Park received a final transmission from the Zephyrian ship. The message was short and simple, but it carried the weight of hope and desperation. They say thank you for trying, even if we do not succeed. They say no one has ever cared enough about strangers to risk their lives like this. Jake Morrison looked around his bridge at the crew who had followed him into this impossible situation. Some of them were unconscious from radiation exposure. Others could barely stand. But those who were still able to work continued doing their jobs with determination that amazed him. All hands, this is the captain, Jake announced over the ship's communication system. We came here to answer a distress call. We are about to complete that mission. Whatever happens in the next few minutes, I want you all to know that I am proud to serve with every one of you. The spiral energy wave reached them, and the Aurora's Edge was caught up in its rotation like a piece of debris in a whirlpool. But instead of being crushed, the ship rode the spiral inward toward its center, where the Zephyrian vessel waited. We are in the spiral, Ben Carter called out. Matching rotation speed. We are actually doing this. The two ships came together, in the eye of the energy storm, where the space was calm despite the chaos spinning around them. Jake could see alien faces through the Zephyrian ship's transparent sections, beings from different worlds who had been brought together by desperation, and were now being saved by compassion. Rescue pods away, Ryan Bell reported. Teams are boarding the alien ship now. Dr. Emma Foster and her medical teams worked frantically to stabilize the rescued aliens as they were brought aboard the Aurora's Edge. The refugees were in terrible condition, but they were alive. Among them were indeed children from 3 different species, their large eyes wide with fear and hope. 21 survivors recovered, Emma reported. They are all going to live. But their celebration was cut short as the energy spiral began to collapse. The ancient defense system of the nebula had decided that both ships had stayed too long and was moving to eliminate them. The spiral is tightening, Ben Carter warned. We have maybe 5 minutes to get out of here before it crushes us. Danny. Walsh pushed the hybrid systems beyond their design limits one last time. I am giving you everything the ship has got, Captain, but I do not know if it will be enough. The Aurora's Edge, now carrying 3 times its normal passenger load, began. Its escape run through the collapsing energy spiral. The ship groaned under the stress as it fought to reach open space before the nebula's defenses could destroy it. They burst out of the Crimson Nebula 3 hours later, their ship barely holding together but carrying every rescued soul safely. What they found waiting for them changed everything. A fleet of ships from the Galactic Commerce Union had been monitoring the nebula's edge, expecting only debris to emerge. When the Aurora's Edge appeared with its cargo of rescued aliens, the entire galaxy took notice. Admiral Krivasha of the Altarian Navy was the first to make contact. Human vessel, you have accomplished something that was believed impossible. How did you survive the nebula? The rescued aliens provided testimony that spread throughout galactic communication networks within hours. The story of the humans who had risked everything to save strangers became known on every civilized world. But more than the rescue itself, it was the method that changed everything. The technique of combining human and alien technology to surf energy storms opened up new possibilities for exploration and cooperation between species. Within months, the Aurora's Edge rescue became a turning point in galactic history. Humanity was elevated to full membership in the Galactic Commerce Union and invited to establish the first interspecies emergency response corps. The ship itself was retired to the Museum of Heroic Vessels, but not before every major species in the galaxy sent representatives to study its hybrid systems. The phrase, pulling an Aurora's Edge, became slang for attempting the impossible to help others. Captain Jake Morrison, in his final log entry, wrote something that would be quoted across the galaxy for generations. We answered a distress call from strangers. What we learned was that there are no strangers when someone needs help. The SOS did not just save those refugees. It showed the galaxy what we could all become if we chose to care about each other. The rescue in the Crimson Nebula proved that heroism had no species and that sometimes the most important victories were the ones that saved lives instead of taking them.